Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to share a couple of ride evaluations and ride impressions. But before I actually get into that, I had an opportunity yesterday handed to me to share some thoughts that I really hadn't thought about. And that is there a huge difference between the Bianchi MegaSet and the Bianchi Pinella in terms of ride characteristics, ride feel, and performance? Yesterday, I set out for my normal 21-mile loop on the MegaSet, and about 3 miles into the ride, I heard a god-awful sound like metal rubbing against metal, which strikes fear in the heart of any cyclist out on the road. And it turns out that I went over a nail. The nail went through the rear tire cleanly, not the rim, just the tire. But a couple rotations, the nail actually ended up scratching the back of the seat tube, which was like, okay, so the pristine nature of the bike is gone. It's got a battle scar, and now it's fully my rain and awful weather bike. But I took care of the flat, went home because the spare tire that I use for my tubular is not something that I like to put a lot of miles on. And I decided that I was still going to get the miles in. So I immediately just transferred everything over to the Pinella and went back out on the Pinella. Immediately riding the Pinella, I started getting kind of like a different impression of the bike because it was actually my first time riding them back to back. Heck, even like riding them within days of each other, I had never done that. And I started thinking to myself, what does this bike remind me of? Because I just got off of a steel frame, and it's not giving me that steel frame bike riding impression. So about a half mile into the ride, it hit me that the bike felt a lot like the Cat 10. I was riding initially in zone 2. I decided to pick it up a little bit and do some zone 3 and some zone 4 efforts. And the more I rode the bike, the more the bike reminded me of the performance of the Cat 10. And I'm guessing it's because of the two things: the oversized tubing, also the thin drawn tubing that they use with the boron steel tubing on the Pinella. Really uncanny, but it really goes to explain a lot of the performance that I've been able to extract out of this bike. As I've mentioned, it literally feels like a modern performance bike. I talk about that on one of my other videos. And it's amazing that the bikes are equipped with the same components. Wheel set is obviously different and could yield a little bit of a performance difference. And also one of them has a 1-inch head tube. The other one has a 1-1/1-inch head tube. But I was like, no, I don't think that those things are enough to yield that big of a difference. There's really something unique and distinguishing about this tube set over a traditional steel frame tube set that just gives it a very, very different feel.
What's up, baby? Good, man. How you doing?
Okay, ride characteristics of the MegaSet since we have done the upgrades on the components. I've done 2 rides this past week. One of them was a big wheel crit night, which is kind of like a simulated crit ride, but it's a ride that has different options. The other ride was a longer ride. It was a Ride 84, which I have done several videos, including videos of commentary on there, and those are posted on my channel if you ever wanted to see what one of those rides is actually like. The first ride, one of the things that I noticed on this bike is that when you're riding, like riding out there into the wind, I noticed that the bike is stable. It responds well into the power that I am putting out, which is not that different than the way how the bike was with the 10-speed components. I can't say that there's so much more stiffness with the bottom bracket and the 11-speed carbon crank set versus what I had on there before. The derailleur shifts to me with about the same speed. There's not much difference in terms of record and super record. The one thing that I did notice about the bike, on that part where I was not putting power out into the wind, and we returned and I was just kind of like relaxed in chill mode, riding, chit-chatting with folks, I noticed that the bike kind of felt twitchy. It didn't feel as stable as I would have expected. Not twitchy in a bad way, but just kind of like it just seemed a little bit oversensitive as the bike was going, let's say, kind of like slow. Once we got to the turn-up zone and I started picking up speed, I did notice that the bike started kind of settling down. It started becoming a lot more stable. It started feeling better. Seems like the faster I went, which was just something, it's kind of like if you're riding this slow without much effort and you're not really paying attention, you really need to be paying attention to it. I would say that that probably has to do with the carbon fork that I have on there, because obviously the carbon fork is not what was designed to go with the frame. So it just lent that different feeling. It is interesting to me, though, that as the speed picked up, the bike kind of settled down and I felt more comfortable. As we got ready to approach the first turn, one of the things that I did notice also was I just felt like something wasn't quite right with the headset. So I decided that I wasn't going to go really hard into the corners and things like that. I just backed it down a little bit. I don't want to be the guy that takes people out. So if I ever am out on a new build and I feel something uncertain, I'm not going to get into the middle of a packing corner with the pack and things like that. So I just backed out of it and just kind of like rode behind the pack where I could still get the benefit of the draft. But obviously I wasn't in the pack to really give that impression. On Saturday, I rode from home, went out to do Ride 84. The last few times that I've been out there, I've been riding with a slower group. I hadn't done the faster group in a while, so I decided now's the time, we'll jump in. In the middle of the pack, the bike felt good. Cornering, the bike felt amazing. Accelerating, coming out of corners, I did notice a difference. The bike does not accelerate as fast as the CAD 10, which was the last bike that I had out on that ride. It takes a little bit of a while to get me going. So one of the things that I did just so that I wasn't burning matches was whenever we came out of a corner, I kind of like positioned myself either to the right or the left of the group so that people who wanted to accelerate faster could go by me and I would eventually pick up their draft and kind of like get going with it. Once I got going with it, we were good. One of the things that did happen with this ride was there's a section that turns up that's usually kind of like 25, 26 miles an hour for about 3 miles. For whatever reason, we went down there. It started at 25 and it went up to 28 and it kind of stayed at 28. And the bike was perfectly fine staying in a double pace line at 28 miles an hour. I did not have to do too much to keep the bike going. One of the things that I did notice that was just because of the pace, people kept dropping out of the pace line during that portion, because the way how this ride works is the first 20 miles, it's kind of like a peloton where there's a couple guys on the front and they keep the pace at 25. After the 20-mile mark, it breaks up into two rides. One of them just becomes like one of those unlimited speed where it's 28, 30 miles an hour onwards. And the group that stays behind rides at a consistent 25, 26 miles an hour. But this week they decided to go a little bit faster. But I had no issues with the bike in terms of keeping up. I would say that I do work a little bit harder on this bike staying in that type of a ride. And it's simply because there's always going to be natural speed creep is one of the things that naturally happens. And the other things that happens is people may be taking a swig from their water bottle. They may shift their gears and there's a little bit of separation from the wheel in front of them. You know, look, if you're riding in a double pace line, you can expect to be doing intervals. But whenever that happened and I had to accelerate, I'm like, okay, I'm working to kind of like keep going. Even if I notice there's an acceleration ahead and the person in front of me is getting ready to go and I'm anticipating that, it's a little bit more of an effort for me to actually get the bike going than it would be, say, the CAD 10 or now even the Pinella. That's it. That's my initial ride impression of the Bianchi MegaSet in a fast group ride. I will probably post the video footage that I have for those of you who are into that. You want to just watch the group going up the road and enjoy watching a good a group ride video. I'll make sure that I post that. All right. That's it, guys. As always, our aim here at the channel is to inform, instruct, inspire. Be blessed.